Ced Hawkins here. Welcome to the CedTalks Podcast. My guest today is a teacher at Huntingtown High School. He's a deep person who has a deep faith in the Lord, and I believe that this conversation is going to be really good, and I hope you guys learn something from it. Right now, here is Nathan Orlandi. Nathan, welcome to the show.
Hey, what's up, man? Thank you for having me. It's my first time on a podcast, so it's pretty exciting.
I think you're going to do pretty well. How have you been as of late? How's your holiday been?
It's been good. A lot more chill than normal years with all the COVID business and whatnot, but it was really good to just get together with my family. My brothers both have young kids, so it was good to get them all together and just to spend time with them for a couple of days. So it's been good. Nice.
With you being a teacher in the middle of this pandemic, have you been getting some rest, doing some self-care?
This week's definitely been a lot more restful, but no matter what, around this time it's a little hectic trying to get everything together, get all your, you got a bunch of Christmas parties and you got presents for everyone, you got to make sure everyone's got it. But this week right now, after Christmas, has been definitely a little more relaxing, getting to catch up with some friends, getting to not worry so much about grading and planning. So it's been a good week. It's going fast. It's going definitely fast.
Yeah, we were touching on that before I started recording. Like, it's already Wednesday at the time of this recording, and we go back on Monday. I just think it's been absolutely crazy.
It is. I'm just trying to slow down these next couple of days and enjoy it, and like you said, just try to take some time for myself and not worry about. I know in the back of my mind I have 120 essays I need to grade and get lesson plans ready for next week, but I just got to keep telling myself it can wait and it'll get done when it needs to get done. So.
Right. Being deep in the present, that's such a challenging thing, I guess, for a lot of people, especially for me, because I'm always fixated and focused on what I'm doing next. Like next week, I start my winter mini session, and I'm already thinking about that, and it's so tough for me to kind of just sit down and enjoy being in the moment. But I feel like as I've been progressing more within my college journey, my young life, I've been starting to enjoy the little things and just taking in the present. I feel like that's so important.
Yeah, you definitely have to. If anything, the last almost 2 years now has taught me is like everything can be taken in a second. So enjoying that moment, taking that time to do something for yourself, taking that time to rest and relax and not worry so much about if this gets done or if that gets done. Because, like I said, you never know when it can all be taken in the first place. So just like you put it really well, living in the present, living for now.
Right. When the pandemic first hit us almost 2 years ago, how did that impact you? How did it affect you? What was your schedule like, and how did that impact you?
It's a funny story. So that was my first year teaching, and I remember when we were first told, "Hey, you guys are gonna have 2 weeks off." I'm like, "Oh, sweet! This is awesome." It was in the middle of March, so kind of dragging a little bit because in that time of year, it drags, and it was. I just remember all my colleagues talking about how, wow, nothing like this has ever happened. This is crazy. Da da da. And so, all right, 2 weeks. We can handle 2 weeks. And then 2 weeks turned into, okay, well, we're gonna not come back. We're gonna start trying to teach virtually, and we'll end the year that way, and we'll try to figure it back out in the fall. And so it was kind of chaotic as a first year teacher. One navigating everything before that, trying to get used to teaching and a schedule and a routine, and then all of a sudden the world is shut down and everything is kind of thrown in chaos, and now you're not really you're not so new anymore because everybody is in this brand new situation and you're all trying to figure it out together. So that was kind of nice, where now I'm not how do I put this? I'm not the new guy, but now I have all these teachers who've been teaching for years and years and years who are now right in the same spot I am. We're trying to figure out something that's completely foreign to everybody. So it was definitely really interesting. It was tough. It was really tough. It was tough in the fall when you thought maybe we can get back to normal in the fall, and then find out absolutely not. You're going to spend the entire year almost online. But it was hard. But it was definitely eye-opening, like I said earlier, just about how everything can change and everything can be taken in an instant. So.
Right. What were some of the things that really kept you encouraged, kept you motivated to get on that computer and teach your students and just continue to do your job at the best to your ability, being in a virtual setting?
I think just really providing some semblance of normalcy and some semblance of, hey guys, I know this is tough, but let's do this together. And right now, you know, with the world in kind of weird chaos, to really not take things too seriously, you know, not get too frustrated by the student that wasn't turning work in, not get too frustrated by the student who was struggling because they're more nervous about what the heck is happening in the world versus I need to get this paper turned in. It kind of just, instead of being there to educate, it was more being there as a presence to kind of calm and just help people navigate through this time that was really unprecedented and nobody had been through. So just the idea of being a calming, normal presence. We didn't actually like have Zoom meetings when it first happened. It was more, we just had to like post work for them to do. So it was challenging in a way to continue to keep that interaction and keep that relationship because you weren't actually seeing them. You didn't have like, I don't even know if we were allowed to have Zoom meetings at that time. So it was tough, but definitely the idea of just giving them some normalcy and through all the mess was good.
Right. When you started having those Zoom meetings, did it become more easier for you to teach?
It became easier in the sense of building relationships, like not normally because obviously they're still not in front of you, and but it was nice every now and then to hear actual voices, which was rare. But I think definitely when we started able to have those Zoom meetings and you could see every now and then students would turn the cameras on, you would see actual people, and it did make it a little better. It also made it a little more challenging when you knew students were logging in and going back to sleep or whatever it may be. But I would say overall it was a lot better than just posting a bunch of work and saying, hey, go do this on your own and turn it in.
Right, yeah. I'm not going to lie. I'm one of those students that doesn't turn the camera on. I think, you know, this semester was like the first time, really since the pandemic, where I actually turned my laptop on, went in the kitchen, looked decent, and actually like sat in front of the camera for the majority of the time. Because, I mean, I fell into that category. Just, you know, turn on the black screen like I'm here, but I'm cleaning my room, or I'm in the kitchen getting a snack, or I'm just walking around, you know, just to make it look like I'm online. But what changed my mindset was when I was giving presentations for my online classes and I'm pretty much presenting off the PowerPoints, I can't see anybody's face. So I was just like, now I understand how difficult this is for my professors. So that, you know what, let me turn on my camera, let me at least try to be present and enjoy, you know, this opportunity.
No, it was, it's funny because as teachers, I think we complained a lot about it, but then we would go sit in meetings and we would have our cameras off and we would be doing the dishes or whatever maybe while someone was presenting. Even like we had like virtual back to school night and kids' parents did the same thing. So it's like nobody's really that comfortable with just kind of staring blankly at their screen with their camera on. And it wasn't until, so I'm taking master's classes right now, and I had one over the summer, and we had to have, it was like a 3-hour class, we had to have our camera on all the time. And it was infuriating, and it was also like eye-opening at the same time. Like, it's so much better to be able, like you said, when you're presenting, when you're able to interact with people and you can see them, you're annoyed because you would rather be cleaning the kitchen or whatever while they're teaching, but you also start to appreciate actually interacting with people and seeing who you're talking to and seeing people pay attention. So.
Right. You have a deep faith and a real good connection with the Lord. How did that relationship with Him impact you throughout this pandemic? Obviously, we're still going through it, but those initial few months when it was just rough and we were on lockdown, there was no end date in sight. How did that relationship with God, give you a sense of hope?
That's a really good question. I actually think that for me, the pandemic really strengthened my faith a lot. You're now stuck with a lot of time to kill, basically, and you have options to either fill that time with nothing and sitting on the couch and watching TV, or you could do something productive. And for me, that was getting way deeper into reading my Bible, journaling, Bible study, even just going on walks and listening to different Christian podcasts and just sermons and doing just having the time to do all that I wanted to do in terms of studying the Word, growing my faith. It was really, really, really helpful. And in fact, it was really, really hard when we went back to quote-unquote normal this year with students in person and losing that time in the mornings, per se, to really get into the Word. So it went from I had an hour every morning to read my Bible, pray, journal, to I've got 15 minutes. And so just utilizing that time productively, it was really, really impactful. A lot of churches started putting their sermons online and live streaming services. So it was also really cool to be able to kind of participate in a way with churches around the world, being able to watch different services. And so I think looking back, it was really frustrating, obviously, the whole situation. But I think God used that situation, at least in my life, to really grow me and my faith. So it was pretty cool looking back at it.
Right. I always believe that the pandemic was, I guess, God's way of allowing us to just stop and be still and allow Him to work within us and allow Him to produce the work that He called for us to do. Whatever He put in our hearts for us to do, that quiet time where we were sitting and not doing anything, that was a time for us to, really get to work, really grow our relationship with Him and gain more faith within certain situations that, we may not really believe are going to get better. I always live by the saying, live by faith and not by sight. My eyes, they see one thing, but, when I believe that things get better, it's like day by day, you just get stronger and your faith just increases, the more you trust in Him, you put your faith in Him and not in anybody else. So definitely with me, when the pandemic first started, I was going to graduate from CSM, have a big graduation ceremony and everything, and then that got taken away from me, and it was really hard and heartbreaking. But being able to look at my cape and my gown and everything, and it was really just, it showed me that God got me through tough situations during my time at CSM, and that's the culmination of my hard work. And looking at those things and looking at my other accomplishments that He was able to bless me with, that was able to keep me going towards the next step.
Yeah, it's kind of awesome that you talk about that, because I think we touched on it already, but just that idea of we're always go. We always have all these plans, and I need to make sure that I accomplish this. I need to make sure that I become this, that I'm doing this, that I'm doing everything for the future, and I'm planning all these things, and this is where I want to be and where I'm going to go, and I'm going to do it. And then God steps in, and it's like, whoa, like, don't forget me. Don't go do this without me. Don't leave me behind back here. Like, your plans, you may think they're good, but anything without me is not worth it. So it was a tough but really, really good lesson to learn.
Yeah, that's good. Talk to me about your life growing up here in Maryland. What was that like for you?
I am Calvert County born and raised. I went to Windy Hill Elementary School, where you are currently working. Go Wizards.
Yeah. I was at Plum Point Elementary, so I'm a Panther by heart, but now I'm a Wizard.
I feel that because I went to Windy Hill Middle School, and then I actually graduated from Northern and now working at Huntingtown. Still that little rivalry going on.
Yeah.
But it was I definitely, when you're growing up here, you don't appreciate it for what it is. Everybody just wants to get out. Everybody wants to leave. It's boring. There's nothing to do. Yada yada. And while that may be true, you take for granted the things like the schools you're able to attend, the safety the community offers. For me, a church that really poured into my heart and invested in me, and I mentioned a mentor, Steve Howe, who was our youth pastor when I was growing up, and was just a really, really, really big presence in my life, and an encouragement. And but as a kid, you don't really appreciate all of that. You don't appreciate the community that's here because there's nothing fun to do. There's bowling and a really old movie theater. I think it's been redone since I was growing up, but you can now look back and you can see how blessed you really were to grow up in this area, where life is a little slower. But I made some really great friends growing up. I loved my time at Northern. I made some great friends that I still have today. I had some amazing teachers who honestly are the reason that I have gone into teaching. And it's funny now looking and not being their student, but being their colleague and seeing them at meetings and things like that. But even so, after I graduated from Northern, I started my college career at Louisville, down in Kentucky, and even just appreciating the fact that we were a 45-minute drive into DC. I mean, being surrounded in Kentucky with people who had never been to Washington DC, and it was a big deal. You just don't appreciate what we have here until you grow up a little bit and you look back and you see we do have it pretty well here. But I definitely enjoyed it. Obviously, I'm still here. So it's really cool now, though, to give back to the community that gave me so much growing up and has invested in me so much, and now able to kind of pour that back out. It's really cool.
Right, yeah. I've always been like a simple person. Like everybody in high school always had their plans to leave the county and go off to college and just never look back. A few of my family members have done the same thing where they've left the county, they've never looked back. Whereas with me, I always felt like this was home, and I never really felt comfortable leaving home, leaving outside of this little bubble. And of course, I've always, visited other places and I ventured out, but, I've never really seen myself leaving the county here. Like, I like how simple and quiet it is. Like, while everybody in high school was off going to parties and going to the games and stuff, I was at home playing video games or just writing in my book or just chilling out. Like, I wasn't doing all that stuff. And at first, I always felt like bad about myself for doing that, like beating myself up for not being as active and social. But now I look back on it and I just say, that was me, that was my character, and that's who I was. And, I'm still the same person, even with this pandemic still going on. The world is sort of opened back up, so a lot of my friends and family members, they're off partying, doing their thing. I'm still home, still doing my thing, planning my podcast out, or still doing my writing and focusing on that. So I think I wasted a lot of time kind of being in my head a little bit growing up, but now, I look back and I'm proud that I didn't really change who I was, and I stuck with my beliefs and what I believed in, and kind of just, stuck with myself.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really funny when you get people who you see them in high school, and they're trying to fit a certain mold, and they're trying to fit in, and they're trying to be what everyone wants them to be. And they graduate and they grow up and they look back and they're like, man, I was dumb. Man, I wasted this time trying to be what everybody else wanted me to be. So hindsight is 2020.
Right.
As cliche as it is, it's very true. Looking back it's easy to see, when we were dumb and what blessings we missed out on and what blessings we didn't pay attention to. But it's definitely it's a growth process for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I also think not always involving myself with other people. I think that was also God protecting me from certain situations that wasn't meant for me. So I always kind of look back at that, knowing that the Lord had my best interests at heart.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
How disciplined were you with your faith and your Christianity, your belief in God when you were younger? With me, I wasn't as disciplined with it, and it didn't really hit me why I go to church, why I read the Bible. None of that never really hit me until I was 18, 19 years old, so I wasn't as disciplined with it when I was younger. How disciplined were you with your beliefs?
That's a really good question too. I would say probably more so than most, but like a typical high school teenager, it was very easy to keep my church faith life separate from my school life. I could go to church on Sunday, I could go to youth group on Wednesday, and I had my friends at church and I had my friends at school. But that being said, I still held very true to my convictions in high school. All of my friends knew that I was a believer. All of my friends knew I didn't partake in different things that most people would. And that was really hard sometimes because I think in high school especially, it's easy to get that persona of, well, he's a Christian, so make sure we don't tell him X, Y, or Z. He's going to judge us or things like that. So that was kind of hard to navigate. But at the end of the day, I had a really, really good group of friends at school who liked me for me and who were just grounded in who they were. So I think ultimately having a group of friends that I didn't have to be somebody else was really, really, really important for me. A group of friends who understood that I wasn't going to go and drink, or I wasn't going to go and party, and I wasn't going to do X, Y, and Z. Now did I make mistakes and do stupid things? Of course. But at the end of the day, my faith was still it was important to me. Church was a big deal. And it was, there was a point in high school where it finally clicked with me that my faith wasn't just go to church, go to youth group, call it a day. Like a relationship with Jesus was exactly that. It was a relationship, and there was work that was needed, and it was personal, and it was mine, and it wasn't my parents, it wasn't my youth pastors, it wasn't my friends. It had to be mine, and that kind of clicked for me when I got the opportunity to go help. There's a youth conference down in Mississippi, and we had the opportunity to help rebuild houses after Hurricane Katrina, and it was there that it really clicked. Like, okay, this isn't just going through the motions. You're either in or you're out. So I think it's very hard. It's not hard. It's very easy for students to have one foot in the church and one foot in the world, and try to walk a tightrope. But it's very clear. The Bible tells us, it's not how it works. You're either all in or you're all out. You're not having it both ways. So that lesson clicked for me probably my junior year. And like I said, I didn't make all the right choices, but it definitely was a huge part of my life.
Right. It hit me, I want to say, during the pandemic. I want to say towards the end of my sophomore year of college, because I always had my beliefs in the Lord. I was always a believer, but not a lot of my friends from school knew that. They just knew I had different beliefs and different standards when it came to partying and drinking and stuff, and they knew where I stood with that, but not a lot of them really knew where I stood with, God and everything. I always kept that with my cousins, who I hang with the most out of anybody, so they knew what I stood for, and they knew who I was, and they believed in me, and they accepted me for who I was, and that was really nice. But as you said, there was this constant struggle between being of the world and then being of God. I had to make a choice, and I didn't want to be of the world because I really didn't want to lose myself. So ultimately, I had to make that decision to truly focus on God. And I liked how you touched on a relationship with Jesus and just establishing and maintaining that, because that was always a struggle with me, because I always went to church and talked with my pastor here and there, talked with my grandparents about God, and I thought that could really get me by, that could kind of save me in a way. But it didn't really click until the pandemic started, that I needed a solid foundation and a relationship with God, because I can't really rely on my grandparents' faith and their experiences with God, or my mom's relationship with God, or anybody else's, relationship with God, to really give me a sense of clarity of the Bible, of who God is, what He's all about. So finding that time in solitude to really read the Bible, talk to God, getting a community of believers who believe just like me, it made everything click and sort of come together. But I didn't have my aha moment until college. I'm glad it came now versus later on down the road in life. But, still, I'm glad that I was able to sort of figure it out.
Yeah, it's tough, and I think sometimes as believers, it's very, or even as perceived Christians, it's very easy to, we talk about this Christian checklist a lot. As long as I do all of these certain things, I'm good to go. If I go to church, if I attend a youth group, if I do all these things that I think I'm supposed to do as a Christian, then I'm good. And at the end of the day, if you don't have that relationship with Jesus, if you don't know Him as your personal Savior, all those things you're checking off, they don't mean anything. So that was something I really had to learn. It wasn't just about what am I doing. It was about who Jesus is, and do I believe that He's my Savior, and learning that I can't do anything to save myself. I can't do anything to save me from my sinful pride and whatever else it may be. And Jesus did. Jesus did all of it. And I think as people, especially as I was an athlete and a competitor, and I'm still really competitive. I want to be able to say, well, I did this, and I helped myself do this, and I worked through this. And Jesus said, no, I did it all. I was the one who gave my life for you. I was the one who conquered sin and death. You just have to accept it. And I think that's where we get stuck as believers sometimes, is we want to say, well, I went to church 3 days a week, and I read my Bible 5 days a week, and I did all these religious things, and that's just not how it works. And that was what I really had to learn, is that it's all Jesus. It's nothing else. It's Jesus plus nothing.
Right, exactly. When did you realize that you wanted to become a teacher, and not just be a teacher in the classroom, but also be somewhat of a leader and guiding others within the church?
I think for the most part, going through middle school and high school, I knew I wanted to be a teacher, more so because I wanted to coach. I thought teaching was the best avenue to coach. It's really funny, my favorite show growing up was Boy Meets World. And there's a teacher on the show, Mr. Feeney. He's super nerdy and super lame, but it was just, I know it's a fictional show, but just how he impacted the lives of the main characters in that show was something that I thought was really cool. And then, like I said, the teachers that I had in middle and high school, even in elementary school. I can't remember a teacher that I had that wasn't solid. But specifically when I got to high school, I had different teachers. In fact, some of them are still at Northern. Miss Hitchman, Miss Tassa, Miss Bain, Miss Milton. They all, Mr. Tennell. Just seeing the impacts that they were able to have on students. I think that was when it really was like, okay, let's actually see what this would look like. And it's funny because I did college, so weird and backwards. So when I actually graduated from Maryland, I didn't graduate with a teaching degree, and I got asked to lead our youth ministry program at my church. And as someone who was coming out of college and now being offered a job, and I was like, all right, that's sweet, let's do it. And through working with students there, through the connections that I was able to make there, it all just, God kept moving it all forward to end up teaching. In fact, when I was working as a youth pastor, I got connected with Camp Urbana and Edgewater, which was a huge blessing in my life, but that could be a long story, so I'll just leave it at that. I just, when I interviewed for the teaching job, the English supervisor at the time, her kid had gone to Urbana, and it was just kind of a cool thing that I was able to talk about with her in my interview. It was really cool just to look back and see how God had his hand over everything. When you as kind of this human who doesn't see everything, you're like, God, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? This is not really necessarily what I want to be. God saying, just trust me, and I'm going to work it all. And to now look back and see where his hand was in everything, and how I got my job at Huntingtown, got into coaching, got into all this stuff. It's really cool to look back, and it really is an awesome experience.
That's nice. I've always had that experience with life too, where, I was going through these periods where I couldn't really see where I was going. Even right now as I'm talking to you, I'm going through a transition now where I don't know where I'm going. I don't really know where God is taking me, and I have faith and I believe that he's going to take me somewhere. I don't know what that is yet, but it's such a beautiful thing to just have faith and be able to just grow and know that you are growing, know that you are evolving and changing, and then to, kind of see what he's revealed to you and to be able to take that blessing. It's such a beautiful thing. And he's been working, so much in me throughout the past few years, especially with the pandemic and everything. So it's just such a beautiful thing.
Yeah, absolutely. That trust piece has been something he's been working on my heart for years and years and years. Because, like I said, we all have our plans and ideas of where we want to be and what we want to do and how we're going to get there. And God's like, hold on. Right. Slow down. Let me take you where I need you to be to get you prepared for where I'm taking you. And it's really funny because you can look back and see how he works, and then you get stuck in another situation, and you're like, God, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah.
And he's like, hold on. And then you look back and you're like, okay. And then it happens again. You're like, God, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah.
And we just get stuck in this. We forget almost what God has done for us in the past, and it's not funny. It's actually kind of sad, but
yeah. My mom always says that God laughs at your plans. So it's like every time I plan something where I think I have something set in stone, he's like, "No, you're not going to do this. I want you to do this." And it's like, "No, but I want to do this." And it's like sometimes when you go in the way that you want to go, it's just so much destruction, and you wish you didn't do it, but God still loves you, and he still has his hands on you, and he's not going to leave you. So he's just like, "I still love you. Come back over here. Let's go this way." So it's just such a beautiful thing.
I'm very thankful that he loves me enough to not let me do what I want.
Right. Yeah. What made you want to teach English? Because I'm also into English. If I was going into teaching in high school, I would be a comp and red teacher focusing on writing, because the comp and red teacher at Huntingtown, Miss Moreland, she really had a big impact on me. So I would teach a class like that if I was going into high school. But what made you choose English as your subject?
First off, shout out to Miss Moreland. She's awesome. Second, I just have always really enjoyed reading. I think it's really cool to me that people can come up with such an awesome story and write it out and appreciate, what other people, how hard other people work to put a book together. So I've always enjoyed reading. I've always enjoyed stories. I've always enjoyed books over movies, because just the idea of you get to paint the picture in your head of what's going on. And then writing has always been something that I've loved. Not necessarily academic writing. Not really the biggest fan. I tell my kids that all the time, actually. But writing for like actual writing, why people write, to express themselves, to work through a situation they're going through, to share a story, to teach. So I've always loved writing, journaling. One day it would be cool to have enough writing stamina to maybe publish something. But it's just that idea of using, creativity to compose a story, to compose something. It was always really cool to me. And I think for me, even studying English in college, the idea that there's not really a right answer in what you're doing. The idea that, you can find a certain meaning in a book that's going to be different from somebody else. You can read something differently. So whereas in math, 2 + 2 is always going to be 4, you and I could read the same book and we could learn something totally different. We could get something totally different out of it. So I love English in that way. There's no right answer. It's a lot of times, you're gonna, whatever life experience you've had, it's what you're gonna take into interpreting this book and that book, and so it's just I really enjoy that. I really enjoy that it's not so black and white.
Right, I agree. And you know what? I never really looked at reading like that until you just mentioned it. Like, when you think about it, there is no right or wrong answer with reading. Everybody has a different interpretation for everything. Like Romeo and Juliet, people can look at that as an absolute tragedy, and like they shouldn't have, loved each other that much. And some people can look at that as a beautiful, like, romance, and they should have died together. And I just loved how you made that analogy. It is true. Like, there's no black and white area. It's all gray. You can form your own different interpretation with every book. No different than the Bible, and looking at each story in there and having a different interpretation for each character in that story. So I'm glad you made that analogy. I'm actually kind of look at reading like that now.
Yeah, a lot of it is, everybody comes from a different situation in life. My experience in life is going to be different than yours, and we're going to take those experiences into what we're reading, and you're going to see, you're going to come up with themes and lessons based on, what experiences you're bringing into the story, and so I like it a lot.
So is that something you encourage in your class, for people to have different perspectives of the text that you're reading, or do you want them to go in one area?
I would say, one, I want them just to read.
Right, of course.
But yeah, to understand that, sometimes curtain in a story is just a blue curtain because the author likes the color blue, But it's hard because when you're in an academic setting and you're having to write a literary analysis or whatever it may be, there are certain ways you're supposed to write. So I definitely encourage students to kind of find their meaning and what they see and what they read. But then there's like certain ways they have to write it, Right. Which kind of stinks. but as long as they are kind of finding that lesson or that whatever it may be, that to me is the cool part. Can they write out how they learned that lesson or how they came to that lesson? That's a struggle sometimes, but I definitely would say I try to encourage them and remind them that what I see is not what you're going to see. It's not what Susie's going to see. It's not what Greg's going to see. And we're all going to see something a little bit different.
Right, of course. So you've been teaching for a few years now. What is your teaching style? How do you teach within your classroom? What's your style like?
I'm definitely more laid back, I think, than most. And I really, really enjoy more discussion-based learning. I would much rather have my class engage in a discussion to check for understanding and see if they're getting what they need to get, other than always doing an assignment or always. I tell my students all the time I'm not really a big fan of grades. Try to have the bare minimum all the time because I don't necessarily think grades are the best indicator of knowledge, because at the end of the day, I mean, a teacher can really grade however he or she wants. And to me, when students are able to engage in discussion, engage in conversation, meaningful discussion and conversation, that tells me a lot of how they're learning and growing. But obviously, English allows me to do that. In a math class, I don't necessarily think you having a discussion about a math problem is going to be the best way. I'm not sure. But that's, again, another reason why I really love English is you can have that discussion-based focus. So I would say that's probably my go-to. And just using writing, not only in the academic sense, but teaching kids to use writing for the purposes of figuring out the world around them, expressing themselves, jotting down things that are hard to say. So it's definitely try to be as low stakes as possible. Obviously, there are certain tests and things we have to do. There are certain county writings. There are certain things that need to be done, and you want to prepare them for those. But definitely try to keep the environment relaxed.
Right, yeah. I always liked those types of classes where it was more discussion-based, things were more laid back, wasn't as strict. Teacher or professor isn't just teaching off of the blackboard or the smart board or whatnot. I always liked classes where it was like discussions. I always try to tell this story on the podcast when it comes up, but I took a health and fitness and wellness class at CSM, and this professor was just so laid back, just didn't care, taught straight off the board. Like, I thought, like, man, this class is going to be easy, you know? And then a week later, he got fired, and he was gone. And then we had this teacher, and she was so engaged with the class. I mean, from the first day, she was like, I'm not a professor that teaches off the board. Like, you guys are going to be on your feet. You're going to be active. And I'm thinking to myself, this is going to be terrible. But I had so much fun engaging with her, doing all of those activities. You know, she would teach something on the board, and then she would ask us how we would feel about it. And it was so much fun being in that class. And then COVID happened, and the class was online for the rest of the semester. But just being able to facilitate that type of learning in the classroom, keep everybody engaged and involved, it's just such a really cool thing because it makes you want to be in that class even more because you're having fun while also learning at the same time.
Yeah, it's for me, it's definitely a humility thing, knowing one, I don't think of myself as smart enough to sit there and lecture. And two, the class isn't for me. It's for a student. I've already taken high school English. I already passed high school English. This class is for my students. So what's going to work for them is what I need to try to do. So getting them more involved in the learning process, getting them involved in the teaching process, is kind of how I try to go about it most of the time.
Right. If the opportunity came up, would you also teach 11th or 12th grade English, or do you like being with the 9th and 10th graders?
I would definitely try it. But I really like ninth grade, 9 and 10, because they're just starting out high school. And to be kind of a presence for them as they start their high school journey, it's really nice to give them kind of that welcoming environment as one of their first experiences. Is really cool. I coach JV football and baseball there, so a lot of those players you have in the classroom, which is really fun. So I definitely would move up if I was asked to. I'd probably do anything at that school if I was asked to. But I do really like 9 and 10.
Right. I feel you on that. Have your students made a pretty good impact on you?
For sure. But it's there are most days you always end up learning something through them. There are days where you just want to leave the building and take your time off and
yeah.
But for the most part, every day you learn something new. Every day, a student may tell you something, or a student may do something goofy, or write a silly note, or whatever. But I mean that's why I teach. I'm sure that's why most people teach, is that relationship piece. Is that my 9 and 10th grade English class at the end of the day is not the end all be all, but how you help to encourage and build up and just help these students grow. That's why I teach. Do I want them to be better writers, be able to pass tests? Sure. But at the end of the day, knowing 9 and 10 English isn't going to make or break their life.
Right.
Is really important for how I try to engage and interact in my classrooms.
Right. Yeah. I also learn a lot from the kids that I've worked with also, because I worked at the daycare for 2.5 years. Been doing this before in the Aftercare program at Windy Hill for a month now, and I mean they've taught me a lot from patience, lots of patience, compassion, also giving them empathy and just being able to have fun with them. I used to kind of live life being so strict and uptight. Like I would be the person that just stands in the corner and just kind of like stands there looking all like serious and whatnot. But being able to kind of let loose a little bit and show a little personality, have fun with them is just something that I enjoy also. And I also write down what they say too, because they will say some just crazy things. Just absolutely crazy things. I had a second grader. He said to me last week, "You must not like the United States. You must like Mexico." I was like, "What? What does that even mean?" He's like, "I don't know." And they just say crazy things. But it's those moments like that just keeps you going, because you know that you're making an impact in their life, just like the teachers before me, they made an impact in my life, and the same with you also.
Yeah. No, I love that you said compassion, because that's been a big thing. Is I think we get this idea of, especially in Calvert County, where everybody is well off, everyone's parents work for the government, and everyone has everything they need. And to take those blinders off and to see that there are so many students, even at a quote-unquote like prominent school like Huntingtown, that are hurting, that are coming from broken homes, that have really hard things they're dealing with. So that has been a huge thing it's taught me, is to never kind of jump to conclusions about, everybody's dealing with something, and to remember that.
Yeah, you never know what a smile or how you're doing or just saying anything positive can change a person's life. I mean, I've had instances where I've never been in the best of moods, and I walk in the store and somebody says hi to me and they give me a smile, and immediately that just brightens your day, just based off that one act of kindness. So, I mean, by all accounts, I just think it's so important to have that ability to be compassionate and show empathy to everybody, all ages, because we're all going through something. This thing called life is definitely difficult, even as believers, it gets hard and it gets difficult. But being able to show that compassion and kindness that God always gives us is just such a beautiful thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we're almost, and we're not even almost. 2021 is almost over with. We're getting ready to enter into 2022. What are some of the goals that you have for yourself? I know we talked about writing down plans, and plans not always, coming to our past. But what are some things that you're looking forward to heading into the new year?
I think I want to, as always, continue to grow my faith, to strengthen my faith, to put my faith more into action. Specifically, noticing opportunities to share the gospel or talk about my faith or be an encouragement, like you just said. Kind of notice my way into those things. Also, just I think just I don't know. I'm not a big New Year's goal kind of guy.
Me neither.
But just whatever happens. Obviously, we're in this kind of weird. Are we going to go back virtual for a couple weeks? What's happening? What's going on? To just kind of go with the flow. To not start to get worried or strung up on things that ultimately I have no control over. So I just want to be able to, one, like I said, trust God, and two, just find the joy in all of it, no matter what's happening. Whether it's if we end up going virtual, if we stay in school, if this sport gets canceled, if whatever happens, just to be able to find the joy and to be different than the world way of just I feel like nowadays it's so easy to start thinking so negatively, and I fall into this all the time of this isn't going the way I want, so it's going to make me bitter and it's going to make me complain. And so I think moving forward, especially going into 2022, really trying to find the joy in all circumstances and realize at the end of the day, nothing that happens is a surprise to God, and He is working all things for His good, for our good and His glory, and to be okay with what happens, and to look for ways to use whatever happens moving forward for His purposes. So I think that's probably my biggest goal moving forward.
I think that's good. And so the last question to you before I go ahead and let you go. This is a really good conversation. Love chatting with you and talking with you.
Absolutely.
I had one of my friends on the show yesterday, and he's a student teacher. And I asked him this, and I'm going to ask it to you too. If you could have the chance to talk to your students and give them any piece of advice on life, what would you say to them?
So I would tell them to. I probably wouldn't actually be able to tell them this, so this is kind of a cool opportunity if any of them listen. But just to go and to seek Jesus and to at least find out, who this Jesus was, because whether you believe in Him as Savior or not, nobody doubts that the person of Jesus walked this earth and was a real person, and nobody on this earth has changed human history like this person of Jesus. So it's our, I think, responsibility, whether we're a believer or not, to learn about this person who has impacted the world in more ways than anybody ever, and to at least put the work in to see, who is this Jesus? Is he who he says he is? Or was he just a really good person who did really good things? But regardless, nobody, no historian, believer, atheist, nobody questions the person of Jesus walked this world. So I think just the best piece of advice I could give is to do your work and find out who he was. I think, like any historical figure, it's our job to, like I said, nobody impacted the world as much as this person of Jesus. So don't we think we should have the responsibility of figuring out who this Jesus is and who he was. So that would be my advice. Obviously, I probably wouldn't be able to give them that advice
Right.
in my class.
Yeah, of course.
But I mean, finding out who Jesus is to them. Is he Savior, or was he just a good person who was a little cuckoo, you know?
Right.
So that would be it.
Yeah, I always believed in Jesus, always believed in the Lord, because I was in the church when I was from a youngin', like 5, 6, with my great-grandfather, and he just taking me up under his wing and just taking me there. But I never really knew who I was as an individual or as a person, and it wasn't until I really got to know Jesus on that personal level through talking to him, writing to him, and just spending time with him that I've slowly started to realize who God created me to be. And so my piece of advice to anybody looking to become a Christian, looking to find more about God, is spend time with them once you know who he is, and he will reveal his truth to you.
Amen, absolutely.
Yep. Nathan, I had such an incredible time talking with you. This was our first one-on-one conversation, and I think it went totally well. I think I got 55 minutes, wasn't an hour, but hey, almost an hour out of you, but I love talking with you.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. This is the CedTalks Podcast. Stay blessed and stay encouraged.